The Makola banquet hall is full of light and laughter. Zainab, in a white dress that catches the chandeliers, spins slowly with Kwame while the band plays a soft song in guest sway. Her phone buzzes against the satin of her gown. She glances down, still smiling, then freezes. The sender is Aminata. The message reads, "You need to know what really happened before you say, forever." Attached are a PDF and a voice note. The paper icon gleams on the screen like a small accusation. Her smile falters and the music thins. For a heartbeat she stares, fingers numb. Around them the dance carries on but the air changes. A woman at a table leans forward. A child stops clapping. Whispers begin like a low wind and then spread. The band slows but does not stop. Zainab taps the voice note. A laugh comes through, eerie and casual, and a sentence that sounds like a blade. "If she had his child, she would have him forever, so I lied." The PDF opens. Pages of scans and messages scroll across the phone as if proof is sliding into the light. Kwame's grip tightens. Zainab steps back. Her breathing is small and fast. Guests look at each other, unsure whether to shout or pretend nothing happened. In the doorway the servers halt. The wedding that felt certain now hangs by the thin thread of a phone screen. Zainab reaches for her husband, voice trembling, and the hall waits. And time slows. I met Kwame at Cape Coast University during a heated class debate about a book we both loved. He argued with a bright, calm voice and I argued back with a smile, and by the end we were laughing like old friends. After class we walked to the library and sat under the mango trees until the stars came out. We studied together, argued about exams, and shared dreams that sounded too big to be true but felt right when we said them aloud. He would bring jollof from the canteen and insist I take the bigger portion. I would read aloud notes while he typed, and sometimes we would pause just to watch other students pass and imagine who they would become. Our small rituals made the world simple and safe. We went to festivals in Kumasi where he taught me to dance in the heat, and we took slow road trips to Aburi botanical gardens, holding hands and pointing at big trees like children. He loved being near the water, so we would find the nearest river or beach and sit until our feet were numb. Each trip, each joke, stitched us closer together. Then there was Zainab, my cousin and the friend who seemed to fit into every photo. She was the bright one who could charm anyone with a word or a look. At first she was just part of the group, always joining our study nights and laughing at our private jokes. She would call me late to gossip or come by with snacks and stories. Sometimes she would sit between us and make us both laugh until our sides hurt. Her presence felt natural. But there were small things I ignored. A quick glance when Kwame told a story. A joke that lingered too long. A message I found on her phone because she left it open, a line that made my stomach twist but that I told myself was nothing. When Kwame and I planned our future she seemed to approve, but once I caught her smile when he praised me and it was not the warm smile cousins give. Still I trusted her. I thought family was a safe place and that my worries were my own. People say envy shows itself in big acts, but it often starts as a tiny crack. Zainab's words sometimes shifted the story like a soft hand moving a photograph on a wall. She would laugh and then say something that made me doubt myself. She offered help in ways that made me feel grateful and then smaller. I remember the way she hugged me at night like a sister and the way she stayed late at our study sessions like a friend, and I remember how easy it felt to let her in. Looking back now, those small moments were pieces of a plan I never saw. I was in love, and the world felt whole. I believed in laughter, in late nights, in road trips, and in the safe place family promised. I believed in Kwame. I believed in Zainab too, until her quiet envy became the story that stole what I had loved most. The day I found out I was pregnant felt like the sun had come back after a long rain. I was alone in my room at first, staring at the 2 lines on the test and laughing like a fool, then crying because the thought of a little life with Kwame made my chest so full I could not breathe. I ran to call him, then remembered how tired he sounded at work, how he had said this month was impossible. So I went to Zainab first. She hugged me like a cousin should, her voice soft, her eyes bright. She kissed my forehead and said, "This is the best news," and I believed her joy was as real as mine. When I asked if she could tell Kwame because he was stressed, she nodded and said she would handle it, with a smile that felt like relief. I thought it was kind. I thought it was love. For days I lived in secret plans. I imagined the way Kwame would look when he held the baby, the name we would choose, the small life we would protect together. I told only a few people and kept the little tests tucked in a drawer like treasure. Then one evening he came to my room, eyes hard, voice that did not belong to the man I knew. "Zainab says you lied," he said. "She told me this is fake." My heart stopped. I reached for my phone to show him the messages, the photos, anything that proved I was not making it up. He would not listen. "Why would she lie?" he asked, and his face had the look of a man betrayed. I tried to explain, to show him the small proof I had, but before I could find the words, my body gave up on me. I miscarried alone in the bathroom late at night, the world narrowing to pain and a tissue soaked with a life I had already named in my head. I called Zainab because she was the only person I trusted then. She came and sat beside me in the small hours, holding my hand, wiping my tears. In front of others she was tender and careful, the perfect cousin who stayed until dawn. People praised her for her compassion. Behind closed doors when the house was empty and the coffee had cooled, she looked at me without warmth and said, "Do not make this worse for yourself." The words were small but they cut like a blade. I wanted to scream that my body had told the truth, that I had been honest from the start. Instead I held her hand and let her comfort me in public because it felt safer than arguing while I was raw. Later I would remember how easily she had stepped into the role of the one who told my story for me. She painted me unstable to others and I was left explaining nothing. In a few weeks the laughter returned to the house and the world moved on for everyone but me. I learned then that some lies do not need a shout to be dangerous. A whisper repeated in the right ears can become a truth everyone believes. I also learned that grief can be a quiet thing carried alone, and that the worst betrayal is the one that changes how others see you while you still hold the proof in your palm. For a long time after the miscarriage I tried to put my life back together in small pieces. I went to work, I smiled at family dinners, I said the right things when people asked how I was, and I believed that time would make the sharp edges dull. Then one night my phone lit up with pictures from Tima. Zainab and Kwame were there, holding a new ring in a photo that belonged on a wedding page. The caption crowed about surprise and joy. My chest tightened as if someone had pushed down on it. Friends who had once hugged me looked away when I tried to speak. People I trusted whispered at the market and in the churchyard. The story had already changed. Instead of asking how I was after that night, they asked how I could be so unstable, so jealous, so reckless. I had proof in my drawer, my scans, the messages I kept like tokens, but their eyes were filled with the version Zainab fed them. She had become the kind cousin who comforted me and the sensible friend who warned everyone about my supposed drama. I watched them accept her story because it fit better with the gossip they liked to tell. I remember the first time I saw Kwame after the photos. He avoided my gaze like someone who had been trained to look away. His friends smiled politely and pretended nothing was wrong. Someone said, half a joke, that I had made a scene when I lost the baby. Another person hinted I had been trying to trap him. Each hint was a small nail in a wooden box labeled with my name. I stopped going to the places we used to go together. I stopped answering calls at odd hours. I let my hair grow long and my laughter grow quiet. But inside I began to collect things. I read old messages again and saved the screenshots. I found the doctor's notes in the paperwork I had shoved in a box and copied every page. I listened to old voice notes where Kwame laughed at the thought of children with me, and I saved them to another folder. I knew I could not fight with speeches or loud accusations. People loved a good story and they would choose the easiest one to swallow. So I built a quieter case. I wrote dates in a notebook. I matched messages to times. I made a list of witnesses who knew what had really happened. I recorded my own voice telling the truth, steady and calm, so there would be something solid if anyone asked. It took time and patience and nights when the apartment smelled like old coffee and regret. It felt like collecting seeds to plant in soil that had been called barren. I did not want revenge. I wanted a simple thing, the truth to be able to breathe again in my life. While the town danced around the lie Zainab set like a new headline, I worked in the corners, saving proof like a lighthouse saving itself for the storm. The harder I worked, the clearer I became that her charm had been the mask for a plan. She had rewritten my story for the people who mattered to her, and only evidence could write it back the way it had been. The envelope felt heavier than paper when I pulled it from the mailbox, like the world had wrapped itself in ivory and tied a bow around my chest. Inside was a card printed in the same gold font I had seen in so many wedding posts, and when I opened it my hands shook. It said their names, the date, the place, everything I had feared and tried not to know. Tucked behind the card was a thin note from Zainab written in her neat hand. She wrote, with a calm I could still hear in her voice, no hard feelings. You can finally move on. The words were meant to be kind. They landed like salt. I sat on the floor with the invitation on my lap and felt a slow, cold anger rise up through the tired parts of me. For a long time I had wanted two things, to heal and to be honest. The note made one of those things impossible unless I did something. I decided then that I would move on, but only after I told Kwame the truth in a way he could not ignore. I did not want a scene that would feed gossip. I wanted the truth to stand on its own, plain and heavy, like a stone in the middle of a room where no one could step around it. So I set to work. I emptied drawers and folders and found every piece of paper I had kept for no other reason than hope. I scanned my doctor's reports and labeled each page with the date and the name on the letterhead. I dug up old WhatsApp threads and screen-grabbed the messages where Zainab promised to handle it, and where she laughed about things she should never have laughed about. I found voice notes I had saved of Kwame talking about children and future plans and put them in a new folder called Proof. I learned how to make PDFs and how to stitch voice files together so the recordings would play in sequence and make a story that could not be dismissed as coincidence. I printed copies and made neat stacks, one for Kwame, one for myself, and one I kept in the tiny safe I had bought after the miscarriage because I finally understood how fragile trust could be. I rehearsed what I would say to him in the mirror until my voice stopped trembling. I wrote a short note to hand him, simple and direct, because when people are shocked, too many words float away. I also planned for the worst. If he would not listen in public, I would email everything to addresses I knew he checked. If that failed, I would send the files to a friend of his who had always defended me during exams and late nights. I did not do this out of spite. I did it because the lie had stolen a part of my life and because silence felt like a coffin. Each night I pushed the papers flat with a heavy book and the stack grew thicker, like a small fortress I had built for truth. Friends asked why I was quieter and I did not tell them. I was saving my breath and my evidence for the right moment. When the invitation came it almost broke me, but it also sharpened me. I had wanted to move on. Now I would move on with my truth in my hand. The hall smelled of perfume and fried jollof when my message went through, a small, calm act that felt heavier than I had imagined. I had attached the scans of my hospital reports, the screenshots of the WhatsApp threads where Zainab promised to handle it, and the voice file I had kept hidden for months. I watched the little blue tick appear and then waited as if waiting could change anything. The voice note started soft and ordinary, like a laugh between friends, and then Zainab said it plainly, almost proud, if she had his child, she would have him forever. I could not allow that. Her laugh threaded through the sentence and made it colder. For a heartbeat the band played and no one moved, and then I saw her smile drop as if someone had breathed on a mirror. Kwame's face went white. He stepped back from the dance and looked at the phone as if the screen had burned him. He did not speak at first. His hands shook around Zainab's fingers, and then he excused himself with a small mutter that sounded like an apology to everyone and nothing to me. Guests who had been clapping fell silent. A woman near the buffet covered her mouth. A man reached for his wine and then left his glass like it had become a guilty thing. I could feel the air change in the room, as if the music had been turned down by invisible hands. Zainab's feet moved before her face did. She ran after him, ring flashing, voice breaking into a pitch that did not reach his retreating shape. People followed with eyes, with whispers that pushed like waves. Phones came out. Someone called after Kwame. Someone else tried to soothe Zainab, touching her arm, saying things that meant nothing now. In that moment the party split into two kinds of people. Some stood frozen, caught by the sudden drop from celebration to confusion. Others leaned in, hungry for the story, murmuring questions that passed like a current through the crowd. I sat at my table, hands clasped so tight my knuckles ached, and felt a strange lightness that came from letting the truth be the thing in my hands at last. I had not wanted to ruin a night for hundreds of people. I had wanted only one person to know the truth before he said forever. But truth does not stay private when it is carried on paper and sound. It spreads. It makes people choose sides. I watched as faces I had once trusted rearranged themselves like cards. Some looked betrayed. Some looked ashamed. Some looked relieved that the secret had finally become a question they could ask aloud. The band stopped the song and the microphones picked up a sound like 100 people breathing in at once. Zainab stood in the doorway, small and frantic, while Kwame walked away into the night with the phone still in his hand, the recording still playing the words that would not be unheard. The next morning the city felt different, as if someone had turned down the music across Accra. My phone filled with messages and missed calls. I heard the wedding had ended early and that Kwame left the hotel alone, his bag already gone from the lobby. People spoke in low voices about Zainab disappearing, maybe hiding in Takoradi, maybe nowhere at all. The whispers were loud enough to reach me though I did not join them. I sat with a cup of coffee that had gone cold and let the news settle like dust on the table. I had not sent those files to hurt anyone or to watch a life break. I had sent them because I needed my truth back in my hands. For so long other people had told my story for me. They had chosen the version that was easiest to repeat. That made me small and quiet and careful in ways I did not like. Putting those papers and recordings into the world felt like taking a breath I had been denying myself. I thought about how quickly people accept a story that fits what they already believe and how slowly they listen to a different one. I thought about nights alone and the small acts of kindness that had been real despite the lies. Rumors turned into headlines in town and then into empty gossip at market stalls, but they could not reach the quiet I felt when I walked to Labadi Beach that evening. The sea was steady and the waves kept the time while I walked along the sand. My bare feet left short, bright marks that vanished with each new swell. I felt lighter with every step. I did not need everyone to forgive me. I only needed to know I had told the truth. The ocean kept its honest work and the sky made room for a new kind of peace. I spoke once, softly to myself, then into the wind. She thought her lies buried me. But the truth does not die. It waits for the right night to rise.